Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Ahead in the next 5 minutes, live local news for the First Coast from the WJCT News team.
It's the biggest stories of the week. The state where DEI goes to die. Florida abandons anything related to diversity, equity, and inclusion on college campuses. The city council agrees to millions in jail improvements, even as it eyes a multi-million-dollar move. Political infighting intensifies following the mayor's removal of a Confederate statue. And the local port eyes cruise ship expansion, even as ships battle onboard infection. I'm Ann Schindler. We'll be talking about all that and more on First Coast Connect's Week in Review. Then later, new music to add to your weekend playlist. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
And good morning. It's a minute after 9. This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Man-made ponds that collect stormwater and filter out pollutants of everyday life are ubiquitous throughout Florida. But new research has discovered a big problem with the little lakes. Tom Bayless has more.
The thinking was, and still is in many cases, that stormwater retention ponds are a great way to let nature, not electricity, clean polluted runoff as the water percolates back down to the aquifer. However, researchers studying retention ponds in Manatee County discovered far more carbon dioxide and methane leak from the ponds into the atmosphere than get trapped in the sediments below. Those are two of the most powerful greenhouse gases that contribute to global warming. Yet retention ponds are the most common stormwater control measure in America today, and there are some 76,000 in Florida. The authors of the study, published in Communications, Earth and Environment, an Earth Science journal, suggest emissions from the ponds need to be included when measuring a region's output of climate-warming gases. In Fort Myers, I'm Tom Bayless.
In Florida, a bill addressing a shortage of affordable housing is moving forward after being approved by a House committee this week. State Representative Cindy Stevenson of St. John's filed the bill that would allow park trailers, that is, wheeled units no larger than 400 square feet, to be used as permanent housing. But according to Florida politics, these movable tiny homes could be built to Florida building code standards, connected to utilities, and made suitable for permanent housing. It's 69 degrees and overcast here in Jacksonville. 40% chance of rain today with highs near 78.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Opinions expressed on the First Coast Week in Review are those of our panelists and do not necessarily reflect the views of WJCT News 89.9.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and you're listening to First Coast Connect. It's Friday, so that means it's time for our First Coast Week in Review. Among our topics, students protest as the state snuffs out diversity, equity, and inclusion on campus. The city's aging jail gets a $9 million facelift. The battle for control escalates following the recent Confederate monument removal, and local cruise news, from new ships to pervasive illness to an attempted murder arrest. Then later, recently released earworms for your listening pleasure. But first, a look at the week's big headlines. I'm joined now by some of my favorite reporters and journalists in town. Our own Dan Scanlon from WJCT News.
Good morning.
Good morning. Tricia Booker, professor, author, former journalist, all around great person.
All the things.
Thanks for being here. Renata DiGregorio, my former colleague at First Coast News, a reporter in the morning, but now switching dayside.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Thanks for being here. And Shelton Hull, journalist for Folio Weekly and a longtime colleague. Welcome.
Welcome, boss.
Boss. Sweet.
That's what I used to call you.
Yeah, you can call me boss. That's all right.
Okay, boss.
Decade.
Hey. All right, so let's get rolling here. This week had a very dynamic college campus situation. So students are protesting. Students are unhappy at UNF in particular, but are all around the state. The school board of governors at the state level banned any official manifestation of inclusion, equity, or diversity on college campus. This sounded the death knell for women's centers, interfaith centers, LGBTQ plus alliances all over the state. Here on the First Coast, UNF said it's phasing out its Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. That move was not welcomed by students. They protested Wednesday, speaking here to reporters from Action News Jax, First Coast News, and News for Jax.
If this happens, will cause like a genuine unrest and fear in a lot of these marginalized groups, and a lot of these resources have been used and constantly been used for years, including the LGBTQ side.
Aside from like helping women feel included, they also provide a lot of like really great services. They do like domestic violence counseling. So I think that closing down the women's center is kind of like horrible.
I feel like there's like a lot of diversity on campus, and I think that students should have a place to go to feel like safe and welcome.
The center provided me friends. It provided me education to learn more about my gender and sexual orientation.
I believe that this is an infringement of student rights. I think that not only is this an LGBTQ issue, it's a rights issue.
Keep fighting, keep struggling, keep being as visible as you possibly can, because as you can see, you are not alone. You never will be.
So Tricia, you teach at UNF. Describe the mood on campus. What are you hearing from students, and what are you hearing from other teachers?
Well, I think that it is, although it's what's happening now is awful, it also is not new. I mean, they've been phasing these out since the law was passed. So, for example, the LGBTQ Center has existed, but it's had one employee who could not give any advice, who could not do anything at all. So it's not really new that the services aren't being provided, but the fact that the buildings themselves, the offices are going to be eliminated has been new. And I think it has caught students by surprise that this covers the Women's Center, the Intercultural Center. I mean, a lot of the attention has been focused on the LGBTQ Center, which is bad enough. But like the Women's Center has been around for 25 years. It's won national awards. It's won all kinds of recognition. And the fact that they're really eliminating any place where a student can go to seek confidential advice, to seek guidance, to meet with people who may have similar problems, I think that has caught students off guard. I'm sad that their protests are kind of falling on deaf ears because like UNF doesn't have a lot of control over this. Dr. Lamayam, I think he can't control how this happens at all.
The school's president.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he sent out a note to the faculty, I guess the entire campus.
He did, to the faculty and the students, saying that UNF is committed to providing security and safety and education to all students. They also said, and this was kind of news to me, that they're going to allow student clubs to continue to exist, like an LGBTQ club, for example, funded by student fees. This is new. In the past, there was an indication that that would not be allowed at all. So it'll be interesting to see whether that is allowed moving forward. But I think all of faculty and students are confused by this and sad, and feel like it's definitely going to change the tone of the campus.
But when you say the president sent out this note, I mean, he sounded resigned, but sort of like his hands are tied.
Exactly. I think he made it clear right away, this is happening. I don't want it to happen, but I have to do this. And I guess that's what I mean by the protests falling on deaf ears. We're all watching this happen as faculty and as UNF officials in the administration, and they're like, look, if we want to keep our jobs, we can't do anything.
We're talking about the diversity, equity, and inclusion rollback in the state of Florida on college campuses. If you want to join the conversation, you can reach us at 549-2937. You actually have to put a 904 in there now. 904-549-2937. You can also email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. You can reach out on Instagram or Facebook. or X, and tag us at FCC On Air. Shelton, this is obviously part of a ongoing cascade of laws that have infringed on kind of what can be taught, how it can be taught, what discussions are welcome or not welcome in public classrooms in Florida.
Yes, it's part of a larger pattern going back several years, and we could filibuster all day about the politics of it. And the fact is, it's a small scale, low class culture war done by a bunch of people. Look, the UNF Women's Center has been around for 25 years, longer than any of their political careers. They've saved more lives with those different centers there at UNF than every single elected official in this state combined, unless you count the sheriffs. And it's cruel. These are good people. It's bipartisan. It's multiracial. It's all these different clubs. They're there to help. University of North Florida has been a big part of this community and this community's growth for the better part of 40, 50 years almost. And for these people, many of whom have never even been here, don't know anything about these people, to come in and to bully people that are there specifically to help. It's not only is it cruel, but it undermines the effectiveness of the school, and it undermines like the quality of education those kids are going to get. The kids there's not a lot they can do about it, but I'll tell you one thing that would be cool is if every single UNF alumni just all defaulted on their student loan today. They did that today. That would probably be a multi-million-dollar hit on some of these financial institutions, and then you get the banks involved. And of course, they can't really do that, but it's just a very sad thing and unnecessary.
Dan, this is part of a broader effort, as Shelton mentioned, most notably the Parental Rights in Education, which is better known as the Don't Say Gay Act, restricting what can be taught in classrooms, whether you can mention gender identity, would mention sexual identity, teach about it. So this is backed widely by Republican lawmakers in the state. I know that these measures have been backed by our senators Clay Yarborough, by Representatives Wyman Duggan, Jessica Baker, Dean Black, Travis Hudson have all lined up behind these measures.
I guess they forgot their days in college or university where we finally, as new adults, got a sense of freedom and belonging. And let's not forget that these universities, these colleges, are small communities, small cities in their own right. They have their own police department. They have their governing body. This is a place where you should be able to learn and control things. And then the Interfaith Center, how does that fall under any of what the Republican governance has come across?
Explain what the Interfaith Center is.
I don't know. I just would presume that is where, if you're Jewish or Catholic or Buddhist or whatever, you come, you meet. There is possibly counseling. I don't know what it is, but to me, I know a rabbi who is involved very seriously in UNF's student body, and to me this implies that we don't want any religion intermingling or discussing
Tricia,
what they do.
What does the Interfaith Center do?
It was a place where students of all different faiths could come together and pray together, pray in a non-denominational kind of way. And it used to be a large space. Then they made them go to a much smaller space, and now that smaller space is going to be gone altogether.
So you're taking away that ability to be just part of a community.
Sure, but how does that fall under these new restrictions if it's just a place to come and express, to pray?
I think the reasoning that they're using is that college is for learning, and that if money, tuition is going to something that is not directly connected to an academic pursuit, then we don't want taxpayer money going to that. I think overshadowed by the DEI stuff is the fact that they're taking away Principles of Sociology as a core course. Principles of Sociology was one of the social sciences you could choose as a core course. They have removed that. You can still take sociology, but it doesn't count for anything. It's not as one of your core courses. They're replacing it with a factual history course called Introductory Survey 1877, which purports to be a historically accurate account of America's founding, the horrors of slavery, and the resulting Civil War.
I want to talk a little bit more about the sociology thing, but we've got a call. Robert from Fernandina Beach. Good morning, Robert. Welcome to First Coast Connect. You there, Robert?
Good morning. Good morning.
Fire away.
In response to the person who was you were talking to, the lady prior to this gentleman, and it was about the LGBTQ club that they want to do. And she was saying that, if they had one of these, I guess it's in a school, that the students, around on the campus and whatever, they would feel, the hostility. I just made that word up, but I mean, they would feel kind of output and angry.
Yeah, what's your point?
And the point is that these people have a life, and nobody wants to accept it. I mean, we've got to accept it. These people are not going away, and they should want to have. If they want to have a club, let them have a club, and they shouldn't be persecuted.
All right, thanks, Robert. Appreciate it. We also have a call, Brian from Jacksonville. Good morning, Brian. Welcome to First Coast Connect.
Hey, well, in light of the last caller and the loaded terms I'm hearing in this, I hear the word persecuted, this and that. What is stopping anybody privately donating to fund whatever positions y'all are kind of clutching your pearls about? Is there anything in the legislation that would stop charity from being a possibility here?
Renata, are you clutching your pearls over there?
Trying not to.
Okay. I think that the campus itself is whether these are, some of the work that was being done by these facilities already was privately funded. It's I think providing the facility, having any faculty associated that is being banned.
Yeah, I know a lot of it has to do with where the money is coming from. Like the schools can't use the state money or I believe federal money too. But the part of the reason I think it was given that the clubs can stay is because they're paid for with student fees. So, I mean, I guess technically maybe if someone were to come in and say, hey, I'm going to fund this whole club, I don't know if that's a loophole. I guess we'll kind of see what happens.
I mean, I think that those are questions that are continuing to be explored. Whether I think he's absolutely right. If somebody came forward and said, all right, well, I'm going to donate $100,000 for there to be an LGBTQ center, I don't know. I think it's unclear whether that can happen. I know that in the beginning when this law was passed, there was talk of not being able to use school facilities for any of that. So you couldn't use a student classroom, for example, even if it was free. You wouldn't be allowed to have those kinds of organizations meet on campus. I think in Dr. Lamayam's letter, the president of UNF, he said we are going to continue to explore how this law is going to impact us. And I think those questions remain unanswered.
There's an email that we got from Darlin. She says, now that our state is closing down DEI initiatives and centers at state campuses, where can students and others who were helped by these centers go for help? Shelton, are there alternatives out there for the LGBTQ kids on campus or women who maybe need those services?
It's called 5 points, really. First of all, nobody wears pearls on a Friday morning. That's weird. Second of all, I think that the issue is that it's not about the effectiveness of these institutions or about the money or anything about like that. It's that who these people are. They hate those people. They do not like those people even existing. They don't like it in their face. Like we're talking about student governments. These are things that exist. Again, UNF, a bipartisan institution. This is not a decision made by UNF, not a decision made by Jacksonville. This is a decision made by outsiders, interlopers, many of whom don't even go here, and they're imposing this on other people. And I think as far as alternatives, that comes out in the, it's similar to what happened with the Jasmine contract with Duval County Public Schools last year, and this new attempt to ban kids under 16 from social media. This is about making sure that when young people are being harmed, when young people feel unsafe, when they feel like there's no one there to look out for them, it's to kick them in the face when they're down. There's nothing but cruelty and maliciousness behind these.
I would to be fair to the lawmakers, though. I mean, I think that they would say, look, this is not. We don't have any hate in our hearts for gay people or minorities.
Do.
But I think that they would say this is our attempt to free college campuses of ideology and what is often called indoctrination. Dan, a lot of this might be political signaling as much as anything, right? I mean, a lot of these initiatives were started under our governor, who until this week was running for president and trying to run on a platform of, right social causes.
Right. Florida is where woke goes to die is what Al Ledson's show used that soundbite twice on Saturday. I don't know. I mean, you can take the example of One Jacks, which left UNF to go independent. So the possibility is that some organizations could restart as privately funded or funded by donations. And there are area churches and synagogues and other centers that could probably move some programs in. There's certainly enough houses of worship around UNF that could become community facilities. My question is, does JU have any of these similar programs as a private university on campus, or are all of their diversity programs or clubs or groups off campus? Just to compare private to a state-run university. I don't know.
I also want to point out that Shelton was talking about all the people who have brought this to fruition. What about the students, the student input? What about the rights of the students? I mean, we are treating them as adults. We want them to be adults. We want them to start making their own decisions, but they have really had no input in this process.
From the K through 12 level all the way up through college, the students have no say, no authority to decide their future, whether it's security in the parking lot, security in the classrooms, whether it's their curriculum, whether it's like things like this, whether it's recreation. Next, they'll be coming for certain concerts and things like that. But the cost of tuition increases. The interest rates on these student loans increases. They're being made to pay for everything. And by the way, did anybody ask John Delaney what he thought about this? You know, like we had a Republican that ran that college for many years and did a very good job with it, in his fundraising, helped pay for a lot of this stuff that's out there, including some of these institutions that were shut down.
He, of course, now is at Flagler College,
Mm-hmm.
which is a private school not impacted by this. But we get a message from John on Facebook. He says, one of the reasons the protests aren't getting attention is because people are sick of the propaganda like calling the new law "Don't Say Gay." It's false, and this station keeps popping up that lie. It's no wonder that average citizens shrug when there is pushback that results in real actions against DEI. The closing of these organizations is probably over the top, but it's what you get when you take a radical agenda too far. Renata, obviously, this is not a settled issue. I mean, there are people who very much support this agenda and who are advocating for even, further measures.
Yeah, there's something that every time we talk about this, this always comes to mind is I'm really going to be wanting to pay attention to who the students are that are still looking at UNF and all these schools and whether or not this kind of makes or breaks that decision. Because I know we interviewed some people when they were having the protest the other day, and I remember this one guy said, I think a lot of people can probably relate to, like, hey, I'm from a really small town. I was looking for somewhere that just felt really accepting. I chose the school because they had the LGBTQ plus center or whatever. And it's kind of like, those are the things that people really do look at when they're looking at the campus culture and where they're going to choose to go to school, or they're going to choose to go to school in Florida. And I believe a lot of the schools, their enrollments aren't like changing or anything. Oh, you look like you want to add something, Dan?
Well, I'm just wondering, you bring about, I mean, these are state-run universities, but they also have to market themselves and have numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Does this hurt state universities now, that students who might have wanted that new life and that ability to blossom, I'm going to find a private university that can give me a little more freedom academically, spiritually, whatever. And I think the state universities, can we predict a drop in enrollment at some point?
I know a year ago or so, I interviewed a kid who was, it was right when all of this was happening, and he is part of the LGBTQ plus community, and said that he was actually trying to go to school outside of Florida because of everything that was going on. And I caught up, I called his mom kind of recently for something else, and he's still not enrolled in school in Florida. He's kind of put it on pause for right now. So I think it is impacting people. I wish I had another person who was like the opposite, kind of mindset, but
we were listed as one of the top, UNF was listed as one of the top destination schools that are friendly to the LGBT community by Out Magazine. And after the law was passed, they withdrew that ranking.
I was actually wondering, Tricia, because the dedication to DEI at UNF, all the acronyms, is really, it's actually part of its core mission, its core value statement. It's on signs around campus. It's on the gym. There's this commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's actually language that's used in the various colleges' mission statements as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was a destination school for people who wanted a school that was going to be friendly to the LGBTQ community. And I again, that this national magazine has withdrawn that ranking. And I've talked to several students who feel they feel like this has kind of put a damper on their college education because they don't know what to expect. To me, this comes down to this core question that's changing. What is college for? And I think you're right, Ann, that a lot of the people who have proposed this, they don't hate the community. A lot of them don't. But they only think college is for getting educated to get a job. This kind of reminds me of a couple of years ago when they tried to change Bright Futures so that it only paid for majors that were going to lead directly to a job, like accounting or education, or it's a slow degradation of arts, of sociology, of philosophy, just a mindset that those things just aren't important anymore.
It is part of a, I mean, I've seen, it written about this kind of war on liberal education generally, Sheldon.
Yes, absolutely. It's been going on for quite a long time. The problem
And
is,
liberal not as a political term. It's just like kind of a liberal,
Absolutely.
arts education.
liberal is saying that, gay people aren't going to go to hell. Liberal is saying that gays and lesbians deserve to not be physically attacked.
But I mean just liberal
class.
arts in general,
yes.
and the sociology class being removed from the core curriculum is
yes.
right key to that, right?
Oh yes, they see it all as a, all one thing. They did the same. I mean, they can't decide what caused the Civil War. Some of these guys think that slavery was a good thing. As far as black people, they already ran the table as far as the damaging legislation they were going to push through on us. Now they're going to, you think about the LGBTQ Center, a lot of those people are white. You think about the Interfaith Center, a lot of the people that go there are Christians. Why are they getting in the way of efforts of Christians, white Christians in Jacksonville, to engage in fellowship with people of other races, other religions, and bring those people to Christ? I thought we were trying to bring people to Christ. But they're afraid that it's like, oh, well, this person over here, it's a guy wearing a dress, so let's not bring more people to Christ at UNF or whatever. Like this was an organization and a system that was working fine. We don't need this, and we've seen this across the state. There's a lot of focus on UNF because the mission and the DEI stuff there has gone so well. We've gotten a national name for it. That's why they're targeted.
Mm-hmm.
But it's happening everywhere. It's happening at the University of Florida.
We've got a call, Judy from Atlantic Beach. Welcome to First Coast Connect.
Hi, thank you. Good morning. I'm a retired counselor, school counselor in Duval County. And as a counselor, we really relied on institutions like Jasmine to provide support for our students, as well as I have been involved with both the LGBT Center and the Women's Center at UNF. And, what I would like to emphasize is that these centers help eliminate barriers to marginalized students. Very often when students feel as if, they're in a group that is definitely, discriminated against or having challenges, having the support of those centers helps them complete college. It helps them overcome some of the challenges, that are unique to whatever their sexual orientation or if they've been involved, victims of domestic violence. And so the loss of these centers, while, it was the red meat of a governor who wanted to be president trying to push these things, they'll have a very negative impact on the completion of college for many students.
Judy, good thoughts. Thank you so much for calling. Emily, good morning. Welcome to First Coast Connect.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to comment on students that are now making decisions about where they want to go to college. And my niece opted to go to college in California, partly because of the lack of reproductive rights and fear of any issues with that, and also just the general feeling that Florida is just not accepting generally. And UNF is a wonderful school. My son went there and is very successful, had a great experience. And that was being involved in the LGBTQ community as a musician was just kind of part of it. And it really makes me sad to think that we're not going to get the best and brightest, the talented students, the artists, the thinkers, because of these policies. And that's it.
Thanks, Emily. I appreciate it. We're going to move on. There's a lot of headlines this week, but if you want to join the conversation, you can give us a call at 549-2937. Email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or reach out on any of the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, or X. I want to move on to a $9 million investment into an obsolete building, what everyone says is a building that needs to be moved away, and redesigned. That's the difficult choice that city council members had to make this week. They chose to rehab the aging Duval County Jail, even as they plan to shutter and build a new one. So, Shelton, that's a lot of cash to spend and a difficult choice for lawmakers.
It is. It's there aren't really a lot of good choices. There aren't any choices that don't involve spending a lot of money. A lot of folks want the jail moved away from downtown. Personally, I like having it there. It makes it easier to visit my friends. But also having it downtown, it's part of our weird local culture. Plus, it's right by where the police station is, where the courthouse is. If I would say, go ahead and do the little renovations they have now, but this building isn't going to be able to sustain itself much longer. We should be looking at probably moving the jail and perhaps a police station, all to a different facility. And where would we put that? It's unclear. But as it is now, they have to spend the money on the jail. The cost, the cost of not spending the money is greater than long term is greater than the cost of spending it, especially in terms of just the health and safety of not just the prisoners, but the people who work there as well.
Yeah, Renata, I think that one of the arguments made for moving the jail is that this sort of vertical correctional facility is outdated and dangerous. The new model is much more of a spread out kind of 2 or 3 story at most, where it's easier to supervise and you don't have to worry about, which they have had at this jail, elevators failing.
Yeah, I know they were calling it the campus style, which even just sounds nice. But that was one thing that kept being brought up as well, is we're not just trying to make it prettier. We got to take care of mold and just infrastructure needs and stuff like that. I did the JSO the Citizens Police Academy, and part of that, they take you in and you tour the jails and everything. And it's a jail, so it's not like super nice, but you do go in and you're kind of like, oh yes, this could be updated. It does seem like pretty old, just the area that they even bring you in the beginning to check it out and that sort of thing. But it does always keep coming down to the cost, it seems, and just it's such a big project, so it keeps getting kicked down the road. But maybe we'll see something on it now finally.
Yeah, and Dan, you've been in this building. I think maybe we're in its predecessor building?
Yes, and the predecessor was literally a medieval torture chamber. It was in a horrendous old building. The only plus it had was it had a 3rd-floor walkway to the old courthouse, so you could bring prisoners back and forth without street transport. It's scary to think of. I remember doing stories on the John Good Correction Center, the Duval County Jail, when it opened. We thought it was the coolest, newest, most modern thing, and now it is a monster. It is old, and it does need to move, but if you go campus style, you're talking a lot of acreage. Do you want to move it to the Lanny Road area where the prison farm is? No, that's a far, far stretch away if you got to bring a prisoner into court for stuff. Do you want to build one there and then build a smaller satellite facility next to the courthouse where you can stage your prisoners for court duties? Again, you're adding to the cost. And then we're talking about now moving the sheriff's office to possibly empty office space, and that's a good idea, but then you have to reinforce that rented building with garage space. You have to have an armory. It takes a lot of infrastructure to make a sheriff's office function safely.
And they're talking about moving
That's
to
another
the
thing, yeah.
Florida Blue building.
Well, there's already some rented
Riverside.
offices there, so.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is that's not a new building either. And so I don't know how close to 30 years it is, Shelton, but it's not new. And if we're talking about...
Oh, it's older than 30, I'm sure.
Yeah, so this building, the jail, it obviously gets pretty hard wear.
Yeah.
And is a totally different structure, but is it smart to move into an older, equally old building for the sheriff's office rather than start afresh?
And again, that creates issues. I would say that whatever they plan on doing right now this year, because it's almost like a triage type situation, they have to fix this thing before something happens that becomes like even more of a scandal than we've already had. Shout out to Jax today for all the great work they've done on the on that subject, and all you guys. I think, but then long term they have to find a new place. The idea that just popped in my mind, it's kind of weird, but Regency Mall. If we took Regency Mall, that would have the space for everything. Then you can build on top of it, and it's actually not that far from the courthouse. Now, if they go away from that model, or say the Prime Osborne, for example, but the issue is like the further you have it away from the courthouse, the more likely you're going to have shenanigans, which of course, as far as the people in the jail are concerned, by all means, put as much distance between the jail and the courthouse as possible, because that's more, more ways to get this and that done. But then that creates a public safety issue. whatever space is between the jail and the courthouse, everything in between is a potential target, especially if we start to get more of these high-profile cases. That because we spend a lot of money on the courthouses to bring in these high-profile criminal cases, and eventually, we're going to have some actual serious traffickers and some real bad dudes coming through the system, and you do not want those vans going through residential neighborhoods when the guns
Well, I mean,
come out.
the city kind of, made that bed when it decided to move the courthouse away from the jail in the first place, right? Like it used to be adjacent, and now it's halfway across town. But to Shelton's point, Tricia, I mean, nobody wants a jail in their neighborhood, and Arlington wouldn't love it. La Villa wouldn't love it. I'm guessing that the folks out on Lanny Road, although there's probably fewer of them, it's a less dense area. They already have the prison farm. They have the law enforcement's gun range. So are they going to, how are they going to respond? I mean,
it's a dilemma. $9 million is a lot of money in a lot of ways, but it's also kind of a drop in the bucket of what they need. It seems like it's kind of a halfway solution. It's a Band-Aid, and it's an expensive Band-Aid. So I feel like they haven't put out enough information. They don't know what their long-term plan is. And so to commit to $9 million to this facility that's falling apart that they know they can't keep without a plan moving forward just seems kind of, it seems kind of wasteful to me.
Renata, has this city ever taken action without a plan to?
Oh, no. Our history of renderings. That was one of the things that I was actually thinking just now, too, is like, okay, if we're not going to do it this way, we're going to build a whole new jail. How many different renderings are we going to see of that? How long is that going to take? So it's really, I'm glad I don't have to make this decision personally. There's a lot to look at here.
Yeah, we've got to call Darian from Arlington. Good morning, Darian.
Hey, good morning, guys. Responding to the gentleman recommending Regency Square Mall and you guys talking about planning, it's those kind of shoot from the hip ideas that really can get things into trouble, because the concept there would be moving a jail in a, I guess, ex-industrial area, which is downtown, right? And putting it now around thousands of single-family homes, slap in the middle of all of that, putting, children and other people at risk. I didn't really like that comment.
Thank you. I appreciate that feedback. Dan, of course, that was sort of facetious. I don't think anybody's actually talking about relocating the jail to Regency Square Mall, but, to his point, people don't want that as a neighbor.
Right. You would probably need something the size of the Regency Square Mall footprint for a proper jail corrections facility with an infirmary that could treat the patients, the inmates on site. So where could you go? Could you go somewhere out West Beaver Street, where there's industrial complexes that are not being used, but have a straight shot in to downtown via some good road systems? You'd have to find a location. You'd have to find a developer and a property owner willing to sell it, and then you'd have to face all of the communities, as that caller said, who don't want it in their neighborhood. And I can't think of many places that aren't surrounded by families, that aren't in between the city and there with schools and other facilities. That said, we've had a number of inmates who have passed away in jail custody. We've had to change the medical provider for the jail now to NAFCare because of issues, and we need to do something, and $9 million may be a Band-Aid, but it may help improve the odds of surviving your stay in that jail, and also keep you from getting injured and keep staff from getting injured because an elevator doesn't work or a jail door doesn't close.
Mm-hmm.
Or they could also do it the way they used to do with Head Start centers and put them on top of Superfund sites.
Well, good thought there as well, Shelton. We're going to move on. We've got another subject that kind of won't end, the debate over the removal of the Springfield Confederate Monument. That is being sustained by ongoing questions by the council president and some of the other lawmakers about the process to remove it. Tricia, are people skeptical that these questions are about the process, or is there a sense that those questions are being asked simply because of the nature of the statue and some opposition from constituents?
Oh, I think it's mostly because of the opposition from constituents, and I think that the council is mad that Mayor Deegan did this without their consult. It's interesting to hear the comments from the city attorney who agrees, yeah, I gave Mayor Deegan, I told her that she could do it, but now he's kind of walking that back. Well, I made some mistakes. I maybe shouldn't have done it that way. I stand by my decision, but maybe I did it incorrectly. To me, it seems like a political fallout.
Mm-hmm. And Renata, this week the mayor kind of took some, preemptive action before that vote, sending out a pretty biting email about, what she thought the council's motives were in this process, and kind of going on the offensive.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote down a couple quotes to just kind of stand out from that. She said political retribution, unnecessary distraction, and a lot of what she was pointing to as well is back in 2020 when former Mayor Lenny Curry was taking down the one that's at JWJ Park. And remember, that was right during the Black Lives Matter protests, and people were really calling for that. That's where I met you, actually, Shelton. Right. That was a long time ago. But and that kind of happened. Same thing. It was in the middle of the night. We didn't know it was going to happen, but we didn't have all of this happen after it. And so I think what Mayor Donna Deegan was saying is, we already kind of did it this way, and we didn't have this huge fallout from it. So she's saying it's a double standard.
Yeah, but that was Lenny Curry saying, let's do it. It was done in the dark of night. Mm-hmm. We only found out about it because we started getting calls that it was happening. I will tell you this, the day before this last one, I had gotten a phone call saying, hey, I just helped move some equipment there, and they're going to take it down. And when we got there that morning, and of course, Ann knows this, she was there too, there were 50 people there popping corks. They were ready for this.
They were singing.
The funny thing is, at least 2 city officials I spoke with or heard about didn't know this was happening until literally it was happening. And it wasn't the dark of night, as one council member said. It was actually dawn, and the equipment was sitting there from the day before. So a large contingent of people did know. Maybe some didn't, but I don't see the difference. This was taken out by a mayor's request, the same as the previous one, and this one's generating all of this pushback.
We got a call. Linda from Mandarin. Good morning, Linda.
Yes. Your reporter just outlined what's the difference? A Democrat female and a Republican male. Both of them did basically 50 more people knew about it. So what? The city council, the lightweights that they are, I hope they're listening, they had time under Curry, who had put money in the budget, to do whatever their decision was. But they're such lightweights. Now, not all of them were there. I realize that. But they had an opportunity to make their footprint, and now they want to pander to the vocal people that says, you moved my monument after 100 years. After 100 years, we should be able to come fresh again and get something new there, and they can put it on their site, wherever. Go, like the guy said in the article, move it to Ponte Vedra, move it to Sawgrass and see, oh, yes, we want it here. No, not.
All right, thank you. Appreciate the call. Dawn from Atlantic Beach, good morning.
Good morning. I just wanted to comment that this has been going on for over 2 years now. And approximately 2 years ago, my company put in a bid when the 1.2 to 1.3 million to remove it came out. We put in a bid of $230,000 to do exactly what was done. So my comment is it's been going on for a long time. The council has no excuse. They should have acted on it.
And I would guess your bid was not accepted.
My bid was $230,000, and they just ignored it. I sent it to all 19 city councilmen, and I had one comment from Matt Carlucci, and that was it.
All right, Don. So thanks very much for the comments. We probably have to move on. We also want to touch on another issue that produced several headlines from this week, the cruise ship industry here in Jacksonville. So this is sort of a Hydra headline. There's a cruise ship that's now looking at, adding another line to Jacksonville. And then, some other issues that were happening on cruise ships, including some illnesses. But let's start with the main one, Dan. So this is a proposed expansion of ship services. Now, Jacksonville hasn't always been like a destination port or departure port, but I know from people that I know that have gone to these cruises that you can get from work to, the Lido deck with a cocktail in your hand and, 20, 25 minutes. It's a very convenient departure zone.
It is, and every time I cross the James Point Bridge, there's one of the Carnival cruise ships sitting there ready to go, and they have a large number of people who take these cruises, and the economic impact, I am told by a port official, is massive to have this done. And now the thought is to bring another cruise line in with another vessel, which should be easy to do. You just stagger their departure and arrival times, and now apparently the Port Authority board is going to meet on February 6th, I am told, to discuss the possible contract for this. So I think there could be some good financial benefits here. I think it also might add another little jewel to our crown as being a port cruise destination. So I think it's nice news to hear for once, and it is a fairly lucrative but fairly small footprint.
Does that money accord just to the port, or is that something, because it's not like the facilities around there are conducive to, like, kind of in Cocoa Beach, there's a lot of hotels, there's a lot of bars and restaurants where people who are coming in, spending the night before they leave.
I think
the
it's
next
supplies. You're right, because I've certainly I've done cruises out of both Port Canaveral as well as Miami and even New York City, where I grew up, and that's a massive industry that supports this. Here, you're just parking and going and coming back, but the crew has to do something. There has to be supplies. There has to be fuel. I'm sure there's certain things that impact us, and the word could be worth some money. That hey, now there's 2 cruise lines here.
So with that, though, Renata, as your station covered, there's also, problems when it comes to the cruise industry. We learned this during COVID. They can be, real infectious disease zones. And when you have an onboard illness, as they recently did, it can be a real problem.
Yeah. Oh, this is kind of a gross story, but I will tell it because it's also important to hear. But we interviewed a woman. She was from Georgia, and she just got back on a cruise on Monday into Jacksport. And during the cruise, she said she spent half of the time in the infirmary there. She had to be hooked up to an IV. She said that she was throwing up this bright blue color that whenever she looked it up, it had linked to poisoning. And then her friend actually sent us a video of this. She said that she threw up a live parasite, and then the video, it's wiggling around. Oh, your guys' faces. Yeah.
TMI.
It was not good. But it was the kind of thing where they ended up, they're all okay. There were a lot of people, she said, that got sick all in her group. But they're okay now, but they are wanting more accountability there. I know they were given a $95 credit.
Yeah, I was surprised it was that little. I mean, when you look at the pictures of her, kind of with her bruised IV arm, it really does look like she suffered a great deal.
Yeah, and just they had videos, and she said half the time was in there, and that's the whole thing. But the cruise line just basically said that it was Carnival, that they were gonna make sure everything was cleaned even more than usual. And I know they put out reports about a stomach bug on Monday, and so we actually aired a little bit about that, like, hey, this happened, this is what they're saying. And then a bunch of people started reaching out to us at First Coast News saying, hey, this happened to me too. And so it is, it's something to think about if you're trying to do a vacation.
And it's not the first time with a cruise ship becoming a microcosm for this stuff.
Yeah, not the best marketing, unfortunately. Well, it is time now at long last for our lightning round. Let's start with you, Shelton. What's cooking?
Well, nothing too much this weekend, but looking ahead a week or so on the first Wednesday Art Walk, Folio is having its annual Best of Jacks party at the rooftop office over the law firm of Phillips & Hunt across from Chamblin. And I just wanted to say on behalf of Folio, thanks to you and the whole First Coast Connect crew. You won 2 awards this year, Best Radio Show, Best Talk Radio Show, and you tied with WOKV for Best Local Radio Station. Over 132,000 votes cast. It's the closest thing to democracy that we really get in Florida. So congratulations.
Dynamite. Thanks so much, Shelton. Appreciate it. Renata, what's going on with you?
Ooh, I was looking at fun things to do and eat, and Amelia Island is doing their restaurant week, and it wraps up this weekend, I believe. I always am looking for an excuse to go to Wicked Bow, because shout out to Natalie, the owner there. It's so good. Not totally sure they're doing the restaurant week, but there are a lot of good deals around if you're trying to do that.
For a nice sandwich.
Yeah.
Dan, what? Dan the man. What's
I'm the
going
bummer.
on?
I'm the bummer here. Shands Bridge is going to be shut down the next 3 weekends because of a great replacement, and that's good golly, that's a huge detour. And don't forget, in a week or 2 or 3, I believe the Mayport Ferry, as we know it, also is going to get shut down for some time for repairs. So some long commutes ahead for some of the folks.
Yeah, right on. That is going to be a
bummer.
ankle. Well, thanks. Thanks for the info. Trisha Booker, what's going on with you?
Well, I'm going to throw some love back to UNF. They just received a $1.5 million grant to help individuals with intellectual disabilities go to college and complete college.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I'm just going to file this under Not Florida's Smartest Move. The Florida legislature is moving forward with a tribute to Florida's favorite son, Jimmy Buffett, with a Margaritaville license plate. I'm just curious who's going to be brave or dumb enough to slap one of those on the back of their car. It seems like an invitation for a DUI.
No comment.
All right. Dan Scanlon, Tricia Booker, Renata DiGregorio, and Shelton Hull, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you, Ann.
Thanks, Ann.
Bye.
And stick around. We'll be right back with Matt Shaw's musical recommendations with this week's JME DJ session.
Wayne Hogan of the Terrell Hogan Personal Injury and Wrongful Death Law Firm. Serious injury cases are complex, and civil trial attorneys present the evidence juries need to see and hear. More at waynehogan.law.
Amelia Island presents culinary adventures with prix lunch and dinner menus and gourmet foodie events from January 19th to 28th during the annual Amelia Island Restaurant Week. Menus and details at ameliaisland.com/yummy.
Is the Republican presidential primary race over? Not yet.
New Hampshire is first in the nation. It is not the last in the nation.
Also this week, President Biden's re-election campaign kicks off, and the patriarchy strikes again. Despite receiving 8 Oscar nominations, fans of Barbie are left seeing red. More on the roundup next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
And culture editor Matt Shaw is here to share 3 new songs that caught his ear. It's our JME DJ session. Welcome, Matt.
Hi, Ann. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you back on the program. So what's on your playlist happening right now?
Yeah, so the first song I want to play is from a group called Krungbin. Krungbin. It's a trio from Texas, and the spelling of their name often confuses people and makes them hesitant to say this name out loud, but I'm just here to say that it's Krungbin.
Thank you for that, because it's a Khruang.
Totally confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they make this very chill, very unique instrumental music using like bluesy and kind of like Turkish guitar riffs with hip hop and R&B rhythms.
Wow.
It's all instrumental, and honestly, their popularity is like surprising to some people in that I think because it feels like their sound is somewhat avant-garde relative to like what's mainstream, but they're a big festival act now. And part of what brought them a wider attention was an EP called Texas Sun, which they did with Leon Bridges, who is a popular sort of neo-soul, retro-soul artist.
That kind of helped the connection there?
The connection, yeah. And so now they're back with their first single in a couple years. It's called A Love International. It's not really a departure from what folks might already know about them, but it came out last week, and it's a good, if you haven't heard Krungbin before, it's a good indication of what you're in for.
That's nice. So this is, you kind of say it's bluesy, psychedelic, and I love the term that you use, desert rock.
Desert rock, yeah. So Tanirawan or Mdu Mokhtar, like these artists that have a really singular kind of guitar style that is from like the African diaspora that has fused sort of like bluesy elements, but with their own kind of style.
JME brought, was it Mdu Mokhtar?
Mdu Mokhtar was at Intuition, when was that, last year?
Just in a really eye-opening show, and what an amazing, I mean, they call him like the Hendrix of the Sudan or something.
So there's a ton of artists like that. We're playing a lot of them on the independent 89.9 HT4.
Excellent stuff.
Yeah. Next up, switching gears, Green Day. The pop punk trio from Oakland, California. They have a new record. I texted our wonderful producer, Stacey Bennett, who's also a musician. I texted her yesterday and said, should I play Green Day tomorrow?
Is it too early?
She told me that
They did a kind of a busking show in the subways of
Jimmy
New York.
Fallon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they are back in the headlines. And, it's nostalgic for me, for sure, because 94 was when Dookie came out, their first sort of major label record. And, I think I was 9, and my brother, I think everybody's older brother, had that CD.
Right.
And we would, pass it around, and, it brings back memories of Warped Tour and all this, like, sort of 90s and early 2000s
Nostalgia, sure.
nostalgia, yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so switching gears from Green Day again, last but not least is a quasi-local track. This is Ulysses Owens Jr., an in-demand jazz drummer and composer who's on staff at Juilliard in New York City. He was born and raised in Jacksonville.
But a Jacksonville guy.
Yeah. And he's got a new album with his group, Generation Y. All the jazz publications of note are writing about it. The album's called A New Beat. It features original compositions, but also some hip standards like the song Bird Lives. This was originally written by alto sax legend Jackie McLean in honor of course, Charlie Parker. It's a standout track on the album, and the album's strong top to bottom, so highly recommend checking it out. It's a local at its heart. Here's Bird Lives from Ulysses Owens Jr. and
Blakely. It really does kind of evoke those sounds.
Like the kind of big band era, but also like some hard bop elements in there too. So, whether you're like a jazz aficionado or just getting into it, I think like the music that Ulysses makes is like such a good entry point for digging deeper.
Yeah. Well, Matt Shaw, the New Music Friday newsletter has these and more each week. Is that right?
Yeah, every Friday I send out at least 5, usually it's 7 to 10 new songs that have been either added to rotation on the independent 89.9 HD4 or just caught my ear. This week these songs were in there. Khruangbin was in there last week. But, I've got new Sleater Kinney, was also an enduring band that has a new record coming out, or that came out. And so every Friday I send it out, and there's links to stream them on your preferred listening platform in there. It's a good way to just stay up to date and sample some new music.
Well, Matt Shaw, thank you for keeping us current on the best music. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And that's our program. Send your feedback, comments, or suggestions for new segments to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. And if you missed anything, check out the rebroadcast. It airs at 8 o'clock or on WJCT.org and your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to join us Saturday afternoon for What's Health Got to Do with It, when neurologist Dr. Joe and a panel of medical experts discuss January's healthcare headlines. Join us again on Monday when we talk to the new leader of a Jacksonville group devoted to civility and respect. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. ViStar Credit Union and 121 Financial Credit Union, 2 of Jacksonville's credit unions, are now coming together, all to better serve our members and give back to Jacksonville, the city we call home. Learn more at ViStar121merger.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Ahead in the next 5 minutes, live local news for the First Coast from the WJCT News team.